Ever wondered how chainsaws, Play-Doh, and ancient Chinese emperors are connected? No? Well, you're about to find out anyway. From chainsaws designed for childbirth, yes, seriously, to professional fart sniffers hired by royalty, history is weirder than you think. So buckle up because we're diving into the strangest facts you never knew you needed. Let's get started. Some birds sing in actual musical scales. The hermit thrush naturally sings in harmonic structures that match human music theory, meaning nature itself figured out melodies before we did. So while humans spent centuries trying to invent music notation, birds were out there casually dropping perfect tunes without even trying. Venus spins the wrong way and takes longer to rotate on its axis than it does to orbit the sun. This means a day on Venus is longer than a year there. If you lived on Venus, you'd have to wait months just to see the sun rise again. Of course, if you manage to survive the toxic atmosphere and crushing pressure. The number 2 used to be feared in ancient times because it represented duality, good and evil, life and death. Some philosophers thought 2 was unstable and unnatural, preferring the perfection of 3. Meanwhile, today, 2 is just known for its sad existence as the thing that comes before a gold medal. The chainsaw was originally invented for childbirth. Yes, you read that right. Before C-sections became common, 18th century doctors used a hand-cranked chainsaw to cut through pelvic bone during difficult births. Imagine going into labor and seeing a guy walk in with a mini chainsaw. And people say modern hospitals are scary. AI influencers make more money than real humans. Virtual influencers, who aren't even real people, now sign brand deals, model clothing, and get sponsorships. Meanwhile, actual humans are struggling to pay rent. The modern world's priorities are so twisted that an animated Instagram model might have better health insurance than you. The Slinky was meant to stabilize naval equipment. A mechanical engineer accidentally knocked a tension spring off a shelf, and instead of fixing ships, it did a little dance down the floor. That was the moment humanity decided, forget engineering, let's sell this as a toy. And just like that, chaos became entertainment. Some crystals vibrate so precisely that they keep time in your watch. Quartz crystals inside watches oscillate at 32,768 times per second to maintain accuracy. Basically, every time you check the time, you're trusting a tiny rock to be more reliable than your own sense of reality. And guess what? It is. Hot dogs can legally contain mechanically separated meat. That's a fancy way of saying it's a meat smoothie squeezed into a tube. This process scrapes every last bit of edible tissue from bones using high-pressure water jets. It's like nature's leftovers repackaged into a snack, and we all just accept it without question. People now have emotional support water bottles. Forget therapy pets. Hydration is the new self-care. Trendy, emotional support water bottles are so big they double as personal weights, and people panic if they forget them at home. In the neo-modern world, dehydration is apparently more terrifying than an actual crisis. Zeno's paradox suggests you can never actually reach your destination. It argues that if you keep dividing the distance to your goal in half, you'll always have some distance left to cover. So technically, walking across a room is mathematically impossible. And yet, here we are, somehow ignoring math and still making it to the fridge. Idealism suggests that physical objects only exist because our minds perceive them. If no one is looking at a tree, it might not actually be there. So if you ever lose your phone, don't blame yourself. Blame reality for failing to keep it in existence when you weren't paying attention. Ancient Egyptians wore scented wax cones on their heads. Instead of deodorant, they placed cones of perfumed wax on their heads, which melted throughout the day, keeping them smelling fresh or just really waxy. Nothing says ancient hygiene like slowly being covered in a floral-scented puddle of head goo. The Greeks held the original roast sessions. Public insults weren't just entertainment, they were a sport. Philosophers and poets competed to see who could destroy their opponent with words the best. If Socrates were alive today, he'd probably be the undefeated champion of Twitter clapbacks. Nihilism says that nothing matters, so why even bother? According to nihilists, life has no inherent meaning, the universe doesn't care, and everything is ultimately pointless. But hey, at least that means you're free to do whatever you want. Because in the grand scheme of things, your embarrassing middle school phase doesn't matter either. Play-Doh was originally a wallpaper cleaner. In the 1930s, coal heating left soot stains everywhere, so this soft, squishy putty was used to scrub walls clean. When coal heating faded, the product almost disappeared until someone realized kids love playing with it. And just like that, the world got a toy instead of spotless walls. Certain crystals can literally grow inside your body. Kidney stones are basically rogue mineral formations that treat your insides like a cave. Unlike those pretty geodes, these personal crystals don't make good decorations. They just make you regret every salty snack and soda you ever consumed. People pay real money for virtual clothes. Digital fashion is now a thing. People buy designer outfits for their online avatars, even if they'd never spend that much on real clothes. In the neo-modern era, you can be wearing sweatpants in real life while flexing a Gucci suit in the metaverse. Chinese emperors had professional fart sniffers. Since bad smells were believed to indicate illness, emperors hired specialists to sniff their bodily odors, including gas, to detect diseases early. Imagine being born into a noble family only to be told your destiny is to sniff royal farts for a living. Some Arab perfumes were aged in animal guts. Traditional perfumers sometimes used ambergris, a rare waxy substance from a sperm whale's intestines, to make scents last longer. So, that luxurious oud fragrance? It might have spent years marinating inside a giant sea creature before ending up on your skin. Sea stars use their water vascular system to extend tiny tube feet, which act like an army of suction cups. These little feet can pry open clamshells with relentless patience. It's like nature gave them the most overpowered lock-picking ability, except instead of cracking safes, they're out here robbing mollusks blind. The world's oldest known bonsai, the Ficus retusa, is over 1,000 years old and sits in an Italian museum. It has seen more history than most countries, and yet all it does is sit there in a tiny pot, minding its own business. If trees could talk, this one would probably have a lot to say about humanity's poor life choices. Some hydraulic presses can generate over 50,000 tons of force, enough to squish a car like it's made of Play-Doh. If medieval knights had gotten their hands on one, jousting would have been a much shorter and much more terrifying sport. Ancient Romans used urine as mouthwash. Yes, you read that right. They believed the ammonia in urine whitened teeth, so people actually paid for bottled pee to swish around. Imagine waking up in the morning and gargling with last night's bathroom trip. Minty fresh was definitely not a thing back then. The Aztecs had a serious chocolate obsession, but no sugar. They drank a bitter, spiced version of hot chocolate made with chili and cornmeal. It was so valuable that cacao beans were used as currency. Imagine buying a taco with a handful of chocolate beans and then drinking your salary with a side of burning lips. Burning perfumes was once a social status flex. Instead of just wearing perfume, wealthy Arabs would burn expensive bukur, which are scented wood chips in their homes, their clothes, and even their beards. The richer you were, the smokier you smelled. Basically, walking around like a human incense stick meant you had serious money. The simulation theory suggests we might all be living in a giant video game. According to some thinkers, our entire reality could be a super advanced simulation run by beings way smarter than us. If true, that means glitches, déjà vu, and weird coincidences might just be bugs in the system. Hopefully, whoever's controlling us doesn't rage quit. The ship of Theseus problem asks if something is still the same thing if you replace all its parts. If you swap out every board of a ship, is it still the original ship? Now apply that to people. Your body constantly replaces cells, so are you even the same person from 5 years ago? Or did you get fully replaced? No one knows the answers to these questions. Determinism argues that free will is just an illusion. Every choice you make was already determined by past events, meaning your decision to eat pizza last night wasn't really a decision. It was fate. So next time you make a bad choice, just blame determinism. It wasn't me, it was the universe forcing me to binge watch an entire TV series. Want to dive deeper into mind-bending ideas like this? Hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, and check out our latest videos. Because, let's be honest, it was already determined that you would. Some crystals take millions of years to form, but humans can grow fake ones in days. Nature spends millennia crafting perfect quartz, yet scientists can whip up synthetic gems in a lab faster than you can binge-watch a TV series. Mother Earth must be furious that we're speedrunning her geological masterpiece. Some European countries forgot to decolonize certain places. France still technically owns islands in the Caribbean, Indian Ocean, and the Pacific, while Britain controls 14 overseas territories. So, colonialism never really ended. It just rebranded itself into a less obvious but equally awkward family reunion that never ends. The Belgians left the Congo so suddenly that they didn't bother training locals to run the government. In 1960, the entire country had just 16 university graduates. It's like firing all the teachers at a school and expecting the students to run the place, except with more coups and chaos. A city in Australia has a giant banana for no reason. The big banana in Coffs Harbour is a huge fiberglass fruit that serves as a tourist attraction because why not? It's a reminder that when people have too much time, they start throwing oversized food sculptures into the landscape for entertainment. There's a car on top of a tree in Seattle and nobody knows how it got there. A Volkswagen Beetle has been stuck in a tree in Seattle for decades, and no one can explain why or how it ended up there. Either an alien had a parking accident, or someone took tree hugging way too literally. The largest crystal cave in the world looks like Superman's Fortress of Solitude. Mexico's Nika mine holds massive selenite crystals over 30 feet long. The downside, it's so hot in there, around 136 degrees Fahrenheit, that you can only stay for 10 minutes before feeling like a melting candle. Beautiful, but also a death trap. Jupiter is basically a failed star. It's mostly made of hydrogen and helium, just like the sun, but it didn't gain enough mass to ignite nuclear fusion. So instead of shining bright, it settled for being the solar system's biggest gas giant, bullying smaller planets with its massive gravity and hoarding over 90 moons like a celestial hoarder. Saturn's rings are disappearing. Thanks to gravity and solar radiation, they're slowly raining down onto the planet in what scientists call ring rain. In another 100 million years, they might be gone completely. Enjoy Saturn's cosmic bling while you can. It's the universe's most extravagant limited edition accessory. The Amazonian giant centipede hunts birds, frogs, and even bats by climbing cave ceilings and snatching them mid-flight. That's right, this multi-legged nightmare doesn't just crawl, it ambushes flying creatures like a horror villain with too many legs. The fact that it exists proves nature loves chaos and has no concept of mercy. The first recorded music notes are over 3,400 years old. The oldest known song, written on a clay tablet, was found in Ugarit, modern Syria, and is basically a hymn about a goddess. If ancient musicians had SoundCloud, they'd be out here flexing that their track is older than civilization itself. A town in Canada has a giant nickel just sitting there. In Sudbury, Ontario, there's a 30-foot-tall replica of a 5-cent coin, randomly placed on a hill. It doesn't serve any real purpose, it's just there, existing, confusing tourists and making every other loose change collector feel like an underachiever. There's a house in Japan with a random boulder inside. Instead of removing a giant rock while building a home, an architect decided to just build around it. Now, the homeowners have a massive boulder chilling in their living room, like a very inconvenient coffee table that nature refused to move. The fungus Ophiocordyceps unilateralis infects ants and mind controls them, forcing them to climb to the perfect height before it explodes from their heads to release spores. Imagine waking up one day, realizing you're possessed, and the next thing you know, boom! Your brain is a mushroom farm. Nature's horror department really outdid itself with this one. In Mexico, sweeping a single woman's feet with a broom means she'll never get married. So if your abuela accidentally brushes your foot while cleaning, congratulations. You're now permanently single. Better invest in some steel-toe boots or learn to levitate whenever someone's tidying up. In Nigeria, hitting your foot against a stone is believed to be a sign of incoming misfortune. Some say it means a serious argument is on the way, while others think it signals a financial disaster. So, if you stub your toe on the way to work, just turn around and go back to bed. It's over for you. The decapitated head of a snake can still bite you. Even after being chopped off, a snake's head can remain active for hours and reflexively strike if touched. Imagine thinking you've won against a snake, only for its ghostly head to get in one last spiteful bite. That's pure villain energy. Angel's Landing in Utah is named ironically because no angel would land here willingly. It's a narrow, winding trail with chains bolted into the rock for support, but let's be honest, those chains are just there for psychological comfort. One wrong move and you'll be doing an impromptu skydiving session without a parachute. Research shows women often underestimate their intelligence, while men overestimate theirs. This explains why Chad confidently applies for CEO jobs with zero experience, while Sarah, who has 2 degrees and built a small empire, still wonders if she's qualified to send an email. The real unanswered question, who's actually the smarter one? A bizarre 18th century theory claimed women's brains would overheat if they studied too much, making them infertile. Because obviously, learning math was just too much for delicate lady brains. Meanwhile, men were out here wearing wigs, powdering their faces, and passing out in corsets, but sure, women were the fragile ones. Early printers were basically possessed typewriters on steroids. The first mechanical printers were so loud they sounded like a construction site in a hurricane. Offices using these machines had to deal with the constant noise as if they were working inside a malfunctioning robot factory. It's a miracle anyone got any work done without developing permanent hearing damage. Some snakes play dead so convincingly that they even let their tongues hang out and release a disgusting smell to sell the act. The hognose snake deserves an Oscar for its commitment. It doesn't just fake its death, it fakes it so well that even predators probably think, yeah, I'll pass on this one. The floss dance went from an obscure internet meme to a global sensation, proving that society will accept any movement as long as it looks ridiculous and is easy to copy. Schools even had to ban it because kids were flossing instead of paying attention in class. because obviously education can't compete with awkward arm swings. Japan has a dance called para, where everyone performs the same synchronized hand and arm movements while their feet barely move. It's like aerobics, but only for the upper body. If you ever want to feel like a malfunctioning robot in a crowded nightclub, this is the dance for you. There's an egg that can bounce like a rubber ball. The eggs of some amphibians, like the frog species Leptodactylus phalax, are so jelly-like that they can survive being dropped without breaking. Imagine cracking one open for breakfast and watching it bounce right off your pan like a rebellious pancake. Octopus mothers basically turn into zombies while protecting their eggs. Some species, like the deep-sea octopus Granelodon boreopacifica, guard their eggs for over 4 years without eating. By the time the eggs hatch, the mother looks like a deflated balloon and usually dies. Talk about extreme parenting. She literally starves herself for her kids. A house in Poland is upside down, just because no one set rules to build houses upright. In the village of Scheimbark, there's a house that was built completely upside down, including the furniture inside. Walking through it is so disorienting that visitors actually get dizzy. It's like someone designed a building purely to mess with gravity and human balance. Some Arabian perfumes could survive the apocalypse. Unlike Western alcohol-based scents that fade in hours, traditional Attar's oil-based perfumes can last for years. Some rare blends get stronger over time, meaning your perfume collection might outlive you and still smell amazing long after you're gone. Perfume merchants were the original chemists. Medieval Arab perfumers weren't just mixing scents. They were experimenting with alchemy, distillation, and even early chemistry. If things had gone differently, your favorite OUD blend might have accidentally turned into an explosive. Smelling good was literally a science experiment. In the 19th century, some scientists believed that because men had larger skulls, they were obviously more intelligent. By that logic, whales should be running the world right now. Meanwhile, women were out here solving complex problems, while also remembering where everyone left their socks. An intelligence feat that still baffles modern science. Some of the most valuable things on Earth are completely useless. Take antimatter, for example. It costs around 62 trillion per gram, making it the most expensive substance known to man. But what can you do with it? Mostly explode. Congratulations, you just bought the world's most overpriced doomsday button. Want more mind-blowing facts like this? Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and let us know in the comments what absurdly expensive thing you'd buy if money weren't an issue. There's a rare fungus called matsutake mushroom that can sell for over $1,000 per pound, and it grows best in soil that's been disturbed by natural disasters. So basically, nature's way of saying, hey, sorry about the earthquake, here's a really expensive mushroom you probably won't enjoy eating anyway. The note B-flat is everywhere, even where it shouldn't be. Scientists found that black holes emit a sound 57 octaves below middle C, which is basically an extremely deep B-flat. So technically, the universe itself is humming a creepy, never-ending bass line. Somewhere out there, a cosmic DJ is dropping the slowest beat in history. Early musicians feared certain notes were cursed. In medieval times, the tritone, an interval between notes, was called the devil's interval because it sounded unsettling. Church leaders even banned it from sacred music. Imagine being so scared of a sound that you declare it illegal. Meanwhile, modern horror movie composers can't get enough of it. There's an ultra-rare blue diamond called the Hope Diamond, worth around $350 million, but it supposedly carries a curse that ruins the lives of its owners. So basically, you can be insanely rich, but at the cost of endless misfortune, because nothing screams extra valuable like a jewel that might ruin your life. People pay to be burrito wrapped in blankets. Wrap therapy involves rolling people up in heavy blankets like human burritos to reduce anxiety. It's supposed to mimic the feeling of being swaddled as a baby, but let's be real. Someone just wanted an excuse to be professionally tucked in like a giant emotional burrito. Some therapists make patients talk to empty chairs. Empty chair therapy makes people sit across from an invisible person, usually a lost loved one or their younger self, and have a conversation. It's all fun and therapeutic until you realize you're passionately arguing with a chair and hoping it forgives you. Absurdism says life has no meaning, but that's okay. It argues that the universe is chaotic and indifferent, and trying to find meaning in it is pointless. The solution? Laugh at the absurdity of existence and just keep going. Basically, existential crisis is unavoidable, but at least you can turn it into a comedy special. Ancient people thought crystals had actual magical powers. Greeks believed amethyst could prevent drunkenness, so they carved wine goblets from it. Turns out, drinking from a crystal cup doesn't stop you from getting drunk. It just makes your expensive cup the fanciest casualty of a night gone wrong. The stethoscope was invented because a doctor was too embarrassed to put his ear on a woman's chest. In 1816, a French doctor found it improper to listen to heartbeats the usual way, so he rolled up a piece of paper into a tube. And just like that, medical history changed forever. Social awkwardness saves lives. The number 666 has been scaring people for centuries. But did you know there's actual math horror behind it? If you add up all the numbers on a roulette wheel, you get 666. That means casinos are technically Satan's playground, which honestly makes sense given how quickly they drain your soul and wallet. Mercury experiences wild temperature swings, from a blistering 800 degrees Fahrenheit during the day to a bone-chilling minus 290 degrees Fahrenheit at night. The planet is basically an oven by day and a deep freezer by night, making it the worst Airbnb option in the solar system. No atmosphere, no middle ground, just extremes. The screwdriver was originally designed to help build armor. Medieval knights needed a way to fasten their plate armor, so they used early screwdrivers to tighten screws on their fancy metal suits. Fast forward a few centuries, and now we just use them to assemble cheap furniture while questioning our life choices. The cheese was probably invented by accident inside a stomach. The first cheese likely formed when ancient people stored milk in animal stomachs, and the natural enzymes turned it into curds. Imagine being the first person to taste that experiment. Hey, this used to be milk from a goat's stomach, smells weird. Let's eat it. Humanity has always been bold with food choices. Jelly beans get their shine from bug secretions. That glossy coating on your favorite jelly beans? It's shellac, a substance made from the excretions of the lac beetle. Yes, you're basically eating polished bug spit. And yet, we still happily pop them by the handful, like they aren't tiny, sugar-coated insect projects. Smart fridges can shame you for your diet choices. Some modern refrigerators have cameras inside that track what you eat. Imagine reaching for ice cream at midnight, only for your fridge to suggest a salad instead. One day, AI-powered fridges might start roasting people. Really? Another slice of cake? Didn't we talk about this? There's a therapy where you just lie down and do nothing. Non-sleep deep rest is a real thing where therapists guide people into a half-sleep state to reduce stress. It's basically a socially acceptable way to nap during a session while pretending to be emotionally productive. The neo-modern era gave us machines to make life easier, but postmodernism gave us machines that make life meaningless, like AI bots that write poetry, robots that play chess better than humans, and social media algorithms that control your mood. Congratulations! You live in a world where even your phone knows you better than you do. There's a bottle of Acqua di Cristallo Tributo a Modigliani, the world's most expensive bottled water, priced at $60,000 per bottle. It's literally just water in a fancy bottle. Imagine paying enough to buy a car, just to stay hydrated, because clearly regular water is for peasants. Vikings believed that warriors who died bravely in battle were taken to Valhalla, while those who died of old age or sickness had to spend eternity in a boring underworld. So, if you were a Viking and caught a cold, you might have considered picking a fight just to go out in style. Consumerism has convinced people that they need a separate gadget for everything. There's now a smart fork that vibrates if you eat too fast, because apparently, chewing at a normal speed is a lost art. Soon, we'll have a toaster that judges us for our bread choices and a fridge that shames us for midnight snacks. Thanks to consumerism, companies have mastered the art of making things worse on purpose. Ever notice how your phone battery mysteriously dies faster after an update? That's planned obsolescence, where products are designed to fail just in time for you to buy a new one. It's capitalism's way of saying, nice try, but you're never escaping this cycle. The Aztecs had a ritual where they flayed a person's skin and wore it like a coat to honor Totec, their god of renewal. Nothing says new beginnings like walking around in someone else's epidermis like a fashion-forward serial killer. The idea that humans only use 10% of their brains is a complete myth. If that were true, brain scans would look like a barely functioning light bulb. Neuroscience shows we use all of our brain. Just not all at once, because even the brain likes to take coffee breaks. The world's largest egg came from an extinct bird that made ostriches look tiny. The elephant bird of Madagascar laid eggs that were over a foot long and could hold the same volume as 150 chicken eggs. If these birds still existed, breakfast omelets would be a week-long commitment. Some eggs are blue thanks to a virus. Certain chickens lay blue eggs because of a harmless ancient virus that messed with their DNA. So, the next time you see a fancy blue egg, just remember it's basically the result of a long-forgotten chicken flu that never went away. In Italy, if you spill olive oil, congratulations, you just cursed yourself with bad luck. Since olive oil was once considered liquid gold, wasting it means you've angered the prosperity gods. Imagine making a salad and suddenly realizing you've doomed your entire week. You better start mopping and praying. The chicken dance was originally a Swiss folk song, but it somehow evolved into an international wedding tradition where adults willingly flap their arms like confused birds. It's the only time in life where making a fool of yourself in public is not just accepted, it's expected. The moonwalk wasn't actually invented by Michael Jackson. Variations of the movie existed in the 1930s. But let's be real, nobody made it look as cool. Before MJ, it was just a neat foot shuffle. After MJ, it became the gold standard for pretending to glide through space at family gatherings. In Japan, sticking chopsticks upright in a bowl of rice is a big no-no. It looks exactly like the incense sticks used at funerals, making it a symbol of death. So, if you're casually eating sushi and park your chopsticks like that, don't be surprised if the entire restaurant gasps in horror. The steam engine was so revolutionary that some people thought it was powered by actual magic. Early skeptics believed trains moving at high speeds would crush people's lungs or cause mass insanity. Turns out the only real danger was people refusing to accept that the future had arrived at 30 miles per hour. Want to hear more absurd facts about history's greatest inventions? Hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single wild tale. Drop a comment if you would have been one of those skeptics freaking out over demon-powered trains. The most expensive perfume ingredients smell horrifying at first. Some luxury Arabic scents contain musk from deer glands, which smells like sweaty socks before processing. Yet, after months of aging, it turns into one of the most prized fragrance notes. So, next time you enjoy a fancy perfume, remember, it probably started as something revolting. Ancient Greek music notes were weird mathematical equations. Instead of simple symbols, Greek musicians used an entire system of letters and fractions to write music. If you wanted to play a song, you basically needed to be a mathematician first. No wonder Socrates stuck to philosophy. Tuning a lyre probably felt like solving a calculus problem. There's a lake in Africa that turns animals into statues. Lake Natron in Tanzania has such a high concentration of salt and minerals that any animal unlucky enough to fall in gets preserved like a creepy natural mummy. The result? Perfectly calcified birds and bats that look like they were turned to stone mid-flight. Nature is out here making real-life horror movie props. Some former colonies still have European royalty on their money, even though they kicked those monarchs out decades ago. Queen Elizabeth II's face was still on Canadian and Australian cash until very recently, because nothing says independence like keeping your old ruler's portrait in your wallet forever. Some people still believe that swallowed chewing gum stays in your stomach for 7 years. If that were true, every gum lover would be carrying a personal collection of sticky fossils in their gut. In reality, your body kicks it out like an unwanted guest, just not as quickly as other food. The textile industry exploded during the industrial era, but working conditions were a nightmare. Cotton mills were so filled with fiber dust that workers developed mill fever, a fancy way of saying their lungs were turning into fabric filters. Congratulations, you weren't just making clothes, you were breathing them too. Iraq's army just disappeared in thin air. After the US invaded in 2003, Saddam Hussein's massive army didn't really fight back. It mostly dissolved into thin air. Thousands of soldiers just went home, and some later joined insurgent groups. Imagine showing up for a war and realizing your opponent just left the battlefield like a bad breakup. In Turkey, casually whistling at night is basically asking for trouble. Many believe it attracts evil spirits, and some even think it can summon the devil himself. So if you're wandering the streets of Istanbul at night whistling your favorite tune, don't be surprised if the shadows start whispering back. In Rwanda, women are warned against eating goat meat because it's believed to cause them to grow beards. Apparently, taking a bite of goat will have you waking up looking like a wizard. No scientific proof backs this up, but hey, if it were true, barbershops would be making a fortune off curious risk takers. The parasitoid wasp doesn't just kill its prey, it turns it into a zombie first. These wasps lay their eggs inside caterpillars, and when the larvae hatch, they hijack the caterpillar's brain, forcing it to guard them until they're ready to burst out like a horror movie chestburster. Nature didn't need to be this dramatic, but here we are. Solipsism is basically the ultimate narcissist philosophy. It argues that you can't prove anything exists outside your own mind. That means your friends, family, and even your annoying neighbor might just be figments of your imagination. So, if you ever feel lonely, just remember, you might be the only real person in the universe anyway. Hedonism takes treat yourself to the extreme. It's the belief that pleasure is the ultimate goal in life. If hedonists had a motto, it would probably be YOLO. Some ancient hedonists even suggested eating and partying nonstop because suffering is pointless. Imagine telling your boss you skipped work because philosophy told you to chase happiness. Some former colonies still pay compensation to their old colonizers. Haiti, for example, had to pay France billions of dollars for the privilege of not being enslaved anymore. That's like quitting your job and still being forced to pay your ex-boss for the money he's no longer stealing from you. Many countries got their independence, but their borders were drawn by clueless colonizers who didn't care about local cultures. That's why some nations look like they were mapped out by a blindfolded toddler with a crayon, leading to conflicts where people fight over land that was divided by people who never lived there. There's a myth that goldfish have 3-second memories. If that were true, they'd be rediscovering their tiny tank like an amnesiac in a time loop. In reality, goldfish can remember things for months and even recognize their owners. So next time you forget your keys, remember that a goldfish just outperformed you. Many people think cracking your knuckles will give you arthritis. If that were true, half the population would be walking around with claw hands. In reality, the sound comes from gas bubbles popping in your joints. So unless you plan on cracking them 24/7 like a human popcorn machine, you're probably fine. People hold funerals for their old phones. Some folks are so emotionally attached to their smartphones that they perform farewell rituals before upgrading. Candlelight vigils, eulogies, and even tiny phone coffins exist. In the neo-modern world, your phone isn't just a device, it's apparently a lifelong companion worthy of a dramatic send-off. In China, the number 4 is considered so unlucky that many buildings just skip the 4th floor entirely. It sounds like the word for death, so elevators often jump from the 3rd to the 5th floor, as if death itself is waiting on the 4th. Imagine explaining to a confused tourist why their hotel room number goes from 303 to 305. In Western countries, breaking a mirror is said to bring 7 years of bad luck. But in Serbia, if a baby sees its own reflection before its first birthday, it could bring disaster. Imagine trying to explain to a baby why they're not allowed to look at themselves. Good luck enforcing that rule. Screaming into the void is now an actual therapy. Some therapists recommend primal scream therapy, where people just let out blood-curdling screams to release stress. So if you hear random yelling in the woods, don't panic. It's probably just someone dealing with their midlife crisis in a socially acceptable way. People get therapy from llamas. Llama therapy exists, and these fluffy creatures are used to help with anxiety and depression. There's something oddly calming about staring into the eyes of a judgmental llama while reconsidering all your life choices. If therapy ever evolves further, we might just start confessing our problems to houseplants. In the early 1900s, psychologists tried proving men were smarter by making women take IQ tests after doing housework. Shockingly, exhausted women didn't score as high. If we flip this test today, men would have to assemble IKEA furniture first. Let's see how that affects their superior intelligence. Some people believe that waking sleepwalkers will send them into shock or even kill them. If that were true, sleepwalkers would be an endangered species. In reality, it's totally fine to wake them up, though they might be confused and angry, kind of like anyone woken up from a deep nap. The start of the industrial era turned children into tiny factory workers. In the 1800s, kids as young as 5 were squeezing into dangerous machines to fix broken parts because their small hands could reach inside. Workplace safety? Never heard of it. If you could walk and had fingers, congratulations, you had a job. The first factories were so polluted that workers were basically marinated in soot. Cities like Manchester, England, were coated in a layer of industrial grime so thick that people joked about needing to wash their lungs. If you lived near a factory, you weren't just breathing air, you were inhaling your own personal cloud of coal dust. Before alarm clocks were common, factories hired knocker-uppers, people who banged on workers' windows with long sticks to wake them up for their shift. If you ignored them, they just kept knocking. Imagine getting harassed awake every morning by a stranger with a giant pole. Snooze buttons were for weaklings. Some people with brain injuries develop foreign accent syndrome, where they suddenly speak with an accent they've never learned. Imagine waking up from a head injury sounding like a perfect French aristocrat when you've never even left Ohio. Your brain just decided, congratulations, you're European now. A head injury can make you a math genius overnight. It's called acquired savant syndrome, where people suddenly gain extraordinary skills in music, art, or math after a brain injury. One guy hit his head in a pool and woke up seeing the world in complex mathematical patterns. Most people just get a headache. This guy got the Matrix. The number 0 wasn't always accepted. Some ancient civilizations refused to acknowledge its existence. Imagine trying to explain 0 to someone who believes numbers must have a tangible value. So this is a number that means nothing. Then why does it exist? Exactly. And that's how philosophers probably lost their minds arguing about 0. Snakes don't have eyelids, meaning they literally sleep with their eyes open. It's not just creepy, it's the ultimate power move. Imagine being so unbothered that you just sit there, unblinking, staring into the abyss while getting some rest. Snakes might be the only animals that can nap and intimidate at the same time. Want more bizarre animal facts? Subscribe to our YouTube channel and prepare to question everything you thought you knew about nature. Some snakes have 2 heads, and no, this isn't a myth. Occasionally, a genetic mutation causes snakes to develop 2 functioning heads, each with its own brain. The problem? The heads don't always get along and sometimes try to eat the same prey, or worse, each other. It's like having a built-in sibling rivalry with no way to escape. In South Korea, sleeping with a fan on in a closed room is believed to cause fan death. Some believe the fan sucks out oxygen or somehow makes you suffocate in your sleep. So, while the rest of the world enjoys a cool breeze at night, some Koreans are out here treating electric fans like serial killers. Neptune has the fastest winds in the solar system, reaching over 12,000 miles per hour, faster than the speed of sound on Earth. If you ever stood on Neptune, which, by the way, would be impossible, you'd get deleted into oblivion by supersonic winds before you could even complain about the weather. The number 7 is considered lucky, but mathematically it's actually weird. It's the only single-digit number that doesn't fit into normal multiplication patterns. Ask a kid to recite the 7 times table and watch them suffer. It's like 7 just decided to be mysterious for the sake of keeping humans intrigued. In the early 20th century, the one-drop rule classified anyone with even a trace of black ancestry as black, reinforcing rigid racial divisions. This legal and social construct ignored the reality of biracial identity, essentially forcing people into a single category regardless of their cultural or personal background. The Guinness World Record for the most finger snaps in 1 minute is over 400. That's not a casual talent, that's a one-man drumline. If this person ever got into an argument, they could sass someone into another dimension with sheer snap power. Sharks have eggs that look like alien screw-shaped capsules. Some species, like the cat shark, lay eggs in spiral cases that latch onto rocks so they don't float away. If you ever find one washed up on the shore, congratulations, you've discovered nature's weirdest-looking bottle opener. Some snakes can glide through the air like nightmare noodles. The paradise tree snake launches itself off branches, flattening its body to create lift. Basically, evolution looked at snakes and thought, you know what's missing? Flight. Because nothing improves life like airborne reptiles silently judging you from above. In Russia, if you shake hands or pass something through a doorway, you're basically asking for misfortune. It's believed that doorways are mystical boundaries and any exchange over them invites bad luck. So, if you ever visit a Russian home, step inside before you hand over that loaf of bread, unless you want to anger the universe. Panpsychism suggests that everything, yes, everything, has a form of consciousness. That includes rocks, chairs, and your toaster. So next time you stub your toe on a table, remember, according to panpsychism, that table might have been holding a grudge. Better apologize before your furniture starts plotting revenge. Some brain injuries can delete your ability to recognize faces, even your own. People with prosopagnosia and face blindness have to rely on voices, hairstyles, or even clothing to tell people apart. Imagine not recognizing your best friend, as they always wear the same hoodie. One laundry day, and you're clueless. Electric eels weaponize water-like living tasers. These slippery assassins can zap their enemies with up to 600 volts, enough to knock out a horse. Even weirder? They sometimes leap out of the water to directly electrocute threats. If water ever starts fighting back, electric eels will be the reason. Japan once trained bomb-carrying balloons to attack the US. During World War II, Japan sent thousands of paper balloons carrying explosives across the Pacific. Most failed, but one actually killed 6 people in Oregon. It's history's strangest long-distance attack, proving that even warfare sometimes has an arts and crafts phase. The mantis shrimp can punch so fast it boils water. This tiny marine warrior throws punches at the speed of a bullet, creating shockwaves that briefly turn water into plasma. If mantis shrimp were human-sized, they'd be one-punch superheroes. Instead, they just go around smashing crab shells like living wrecking balls. Ottomans had a navy full of chained-together ships. During the siege of Constantinople in 1453, the Ottomans literally dragged their warships across land to bypass the massive defensive chain blocking the harbor. Because when the sea says no, you just make a new sea. Tunnels of doom were their specialty. Ottoman armies were known for digging tunnels under enemy walls and stuffing them with explosives. This medieval version of surprise demolition meant that even if you built the strongest walls, they might just vanish under your feet. Corn is basically a mutant. Modern corn looks nothing like its wild ancestor, teosinte, which was a tiny, hard-kerneled plant. Thanks to centuries of selective breeding, corn has evolved into the oversized, sugar-packed crop we know today. If aliens ever find the original version, they'd probably think we were playing God with plants. Bananas are doomed time travelers. Every banana you eat is genetically identical to the next one because they're all clones. This makes them vulnerable to diseases that can wipe them out completely, like the Gros Michel variety that disappeared in the 1950s. The banana apocalypse isn't a joke. It's just on a slow timer. Rice has been around longer than most civilizations. Humans have been growing rice for over 10,000 years, making it one of the oldest cultivated crops. If you ever eat a bowl of rice, just remember, it's been feeding humanity since before people figured out what a wheel was. Potatoes once caused mass hysteria. In 18th century France, people believed potatoes were poisonous and responsible for spreading leprosy. It took a man literally eating potatoes in front of crowds to prove they were edible. The real twist? The French later turned them into fries, and now people fight over who invented them. Wheat is secretly a conqueror. Wheat isn't just food, it's a colonizer. Wherever humans went, they brought wheat, wiping out native crops and taking over farmland. This one grain reshaped entire civilizations. If plants had an empire, wheat would be the emperor, forcing everyone to kneel before its golden stalks. The elite warriors of the Ottoman army were kidnapped children. The Janissaries, the Ottomans' deadliest soldiers, were originally Christian boys taken as tribute, converted to Islam, and trained from childhood. Raised with zero attachments to anything but the empire, they became an unstoppable, highly disciplined force, essentially medieval stormtroopers with better aim. Some people are obsessed with hoarding bars of soap, not using them, just stockpiling them. There are collectors who own thousands of bars, organized by brand, scent, and color. Their houses must smell like a combination of heaven and a public restroom. The Silk Road was the world's first black market for exotic pets. Traders didn't just move silk and spices. They also sold live animals like peacocks, cheetahs, and even rhinos. Imagine being a merchant just trying to buy some fabric, and the guy next to you is haggling over a live leopard. Marco Polo's travel stories from the Silk Road were so exaggerated that some Europeans thought China was full of sorcerers and giant birds that could lift elephants. People read his book and genuinely believed the East was basically a fantasy RPG, complete with magical potions and dragon-sized birds straight out of a fever dream. The Silk Road was also an ancient meme highway. Just like today's internet, ideas, jokes, and even fashion trends spread rapidly along the trade routes. If you wore certain clothes in Persia, chances were that Mongolian nobles were already rocking the same trend weeks later. Silk Road fashion was the original TikTok challenge. There's a guy who has spent 40 years collecting belly button lint. He stores it in jars, color coordinates it, and even weighs it. Somewhere in the world, this man wakes up every morning and checks his lint collection with pride. Humanity, we have officially peaked. A teen sold his kidney for an iPhone to play games. In 2011, a Chinese teenager illegally sold one of his kidneys just to afford an iPhone and an iPad for gaming. Fast forward a decade, and he's now suffering from kidney failure. Meanwhile, Apple keeps making new devices every year. Bad trade. Someone spent over $1 million on a mobile game. A man in California reportedly spent over $1 million on Game of War, a mobile game that barely anyone remembers. That's right, he could have bought a mansion, but instead he invested in virtual catapults. Hopefully his digital empire was worth it. A gamer didn't notice a dead body next to him. In 2012, Taiwanese gamer died in an internet cafe after playing for hours non-stop. The wildest part? Other gamers around him kept playing, completely unaware that he had passed away. This is peak video game obsession, when real-life NPCs stop registering real-life events. Want more mind-blowing stories like this? Hit that subscribe button and dive into the weirdest facts on our channel. Women's pockets are practically decorative. Ever wondered why women's clothing has tiny, useless pockets? That's because in the 1800s, designers thought giving women real pockets would make them too independent. Fast forward to today, and women are still carrying entire purses just to hold what men casually toss into their jeans. Men interrupt women so much. There's a word for it. Manterrupting is a real thing, and studies show that men interrupt women far more often than they interrupt other men. One experiment found that when a woman spoke in a meeting, she was cut off within 17 seconds. At this point, she'd have better luck getting through a sentence in Morse code. Women's products are more expensive for no reason. The pink tax is the ridiculous practice of charging more for products marketed to women, like razors, deodorant, and even pens. Yes, pens. Apparently, making something pink requires a financial sacrifice worthy of a medieval tribute. Ottomans had secret police before it was cool. The Ottomans used an extensive network of spies to root out traitors, keep an eye on their enemies, and ensure loyalty. If you ever thought about rebellion, chances were someone had already snitched before you finished your evil monologue. There's a man in Japan who has spent decades collecting women's mannequins. He dresses them up, talks to them, and even takes them out for strolls. Imagine walking down the street and seeing a guy on a casual date with a plastic lady. Nothing says romance like a companion who literally can't argue back. Ottomans weaponized water and also took it away. Instead of just attacking, the Ottomans were experts in water warfare. If they weren't poisoning enemy wells, they were redirecting rivers to flood towns or cutting off water supplies entirely. Hydration was optional. Winning was not. Car safety tests are based on male crash dummies. Most crash test dummies are modeled after the average male body, meaning cars are literally designed to keep men safer than women in accidents. Women are 47% more likely to be seriously injured in a car crash because apparently even safety regulations think one size fits all means one size fits men. In Japan, slurping is a compliment. In many cultures, loudly slurping your food is a one-way ticket to public embarrassment. But in Japan, it's actually polite. Slurping noodles enthusiastically shows appreciation to the chef. So, if you ever visit, go ahead. Make your spaghetti sound like a vacuum cleaner. In Scotland, grooms get covered in filth before marriage. If you think wedding stress is bad, try being a Scottish groom. In some parts of Scotland, grooms are captured by friends, tied up, and covered in everything from rotten eggs to mud. Apparently, if you can survive humiliation, you can survive marriage. India has a festival where people throw cow dung. While other cultures celebrate with fireworks or parades, some Indian villages in Karnataka celebrate Gore Haba by hurling cow dung at each other. It's basically a manure-based snowball fight, except instead of getting cold, you just smell bad for days. Finland has a hobby called wife carrying. In Finland, men compete by carrying their wives through an obstacle course. If they win, the prize is their wife's weight in beer. Nothing says romance like treating your spouse like a sack of potatoes in exchange for free alcohol. Mongolians have a rock, paper, scissors wrestling sport. Traditional Mongolian wrestling matches begin with a ritual dance, but to decide who goes first, they play a game similar to rock, paper, scissors using different hand gestures. Just imagine if the World Cup was decided by a dramatic round of best 2 out of 3. The scorched earth strategy is basically rage-quitting war. Throughout history, armies have burned their own crops, homes, and even entire cities just to make sure their enemies inherited nothing but ashes. It's the ultimate, if I can't have it, nobody can move, proving that pettiness has been a military tactic for centuries. A man played World of Warcraft until his legs stopped working. One gamer in China was so obsessed with World of Warcraft that he spent days in an internet cafe without moving. When he finally tried to stand up, his legs had literally stopped functioning. Turns out, even your body has a rage quit button. A guy divorced his wife because she cheated on him. In a game, a Japanese man divorced his wife after discovering her Sims character was in a virtual affair. Imagine explaining to a judge that your marriage ended because of pixelated infidelity. Your Honor, she betrayed me. In a house she didn't even build herself. Office air can lower your brain power. White-collar workers might be breathing in their own downfall. Studies show that poorly ventilated offices with high carbon dioxide levels can reduce cognitive function. So, if your boss ever questions a bad decision, blame the air. It wasn't me, it was the oxygen shortage. The cubicle was invented to make people miserable. The original cubicle was actually designed to be spacious and promote productivity, but companies shrank the design to cram in more workers, turning them into tiny, soul-crushing boxes. Basically, cubicles went from creative workspace to modern hamster cages in record time. Meetings are scientifically proven to be pointless. Research suggests that most meetings could be emails, and yet, white-collar workers spend hours trapped in them. Some companies even have meetings about having too many meetings. It's the corporate version of running on a treadmill. Lots of motion, no progress. A town in Kentucky once experienced a meat shower in 1876. Mysterious chunks of raw meat rained from the sky for several minutes. Scientists later guessed it was probably vultures vomiting midair, but let's be honest, no theory is truly satisfying when the meat falls from the sky unannounced. The Fresno nightcrawlers are strange, ghostly creatures caught on security cameras in California. They look like walking pairs of pants with no torso. Just 2 legs casually strutting around like they own the place. Some believe they're cryptids, others think they're aliens, but one thing's for sure, they've got the best leg game in the universe. In 2011, a man in Norway reported seeing a floating city in the sky. The eerie mirage had towers, buildings, and streets, all hovering above the clouds. Scientists say it was a rare atmospheric illusion, but it's way more fun to believe Norway has a parallel dimension that occasionally glitches into view. Ryanair, the budget airline known for its extreme cost cutting, once considered removing armrests, charging for bathrooms, and even offering standing room tickets. If they had their way, you'd be duct taped to the wall for a $5 discount. Southwest Airlines once pranked customers by announcing love class seating, where couples could share extra wide seats with a champagne service. Some passengers were so excited they didn't realize it was April Fool's Day. Imagine showing up ready for romance, only to be told you're back in an economy with a crying baby. Early maps were pure artistic guesses. Before satellites, cartographers basically made up parts of the world. If they didn't know what was beyond a certain point, they'd just throw in a sea monster or label it, "Here be dragons." Because if you don't have facts, go for terrifying fiction. The oldest known world map is wildly inaccurate. Babylonian Imago Mundi from 600 BCE is considered the oldest surviving world map. It features a tiny, flat world surrounded by water with mysterious islands labeled "Where the Sun Never Shines." It's basically ancient flat earther propaganda on a clay tablet. When the Ottoman Empire blocked the Silk Road, some merchants refused to accept reality and tried sneaky alternatives, like using smugglers, disguising caravans, or straight up bribing border guards. Imagine getting caught and having to explain to a furious sultan that your 50 camels weren't loaded with silk, but were just really fancy tent fabric. The closure of the Silk Road made Europe's economy super awkward. Cities built around trade hubs collapsed, while others near the new sea routes boomed. This was like watching an ancient version of a small business losing everything because a massive online retailer just took over. Sorry, inland caravan towns? The Silk Age is over. T-shirts were originally considered underwear, yes, the thing you proudly wear with flashy logos. In the early 1900s, the U.S. Navy gave sailors T-shirts to wear under their uniforms, but soon people realized they were too comfy to keep covered. Fashion rebellion starts with laziness. Want more weird fashion history? Hit that subscribe button and check out our latest video. You won't look at your wardrobe the same way again. The world's most expensive t-shirt was sold for a whopping $40,000. It was made of organic cotton, featured a rare design, and had diamonds woven into it. Apparently, nothing says casual wear like turning yourself into a walking jewelry display. The Guinness World Record for the most t-shirts worn at once is 260, achieved by a guy who spent hours layering them on. At that point, it's less about fashion and more about turning yourself into a fabric onion. Soviet maps lied to their own people. During the Cold War, the USSR deliberately made their maps inaccurate to confuse enemies and their citizens. Important cities were misplaced, roads didn't lead where they should, and some towns were completely erased. Basically, getting lost was a government-mandated experience. Ties serve no practical purpose. The necktie is the ultimate symbol of white-collar life, yet it does absolutely nothing except slowly choke the wearer. Some historians believe ties became popular just because they looked fancy, proving that business fashion is just expensive strangulation for style points. Typing speed matters more than you think. In the early days of white-collar jobs, typing tests determined who got hired. Some workers are trained like Olympic athletes to reach ridiculous speeds. If you couldn't hammer out 100 words per minute, you might as well have been illiterate in the corporate world. Light can't decide if it wants to be a wave or a particle, so it just does both. Imagine showing up to work as two people at once, one who slacks off and another who actually does the job. That's light. Forever stuck in a quantum identity crisis, baffling scientists for centuries. The famous double-slit experiment proved light's dual nature, but only when it wasn't being watched. If scientists observed it, light behaved like a particle. When unobserved, it spreads like a wave. Basically, light throws a cosmic tantrum when it knows it's being watched, kind of like a toddler refusing to perform on cue. Cotard's delusion is a rare brain disorder where people believe they are literally dead. They walk around convinced they have no organs, no blood, or that they're a walking corpse. A guy with this condition once asked to be taken to the morgue because he was so sure he didn't exist anymore. Brain injuries can turn you into an uncontrollable pun machine. Witzelsucht is a condition that makes people compulsively crack terrible jokes and puns, even at completely inappropriate times. Imagine being at a funeral and your brain decides, hey, let's drop a knock-knock joke right now. No social filter, just pure dad joke energy. Porcupines invented the medieval spike defense long before humans. These walking pincushions have over 30,000 quills, and if one gets stuck in a predator, it keeps working its way deeper like nature's cruelest splinter. Some predators just give up and walk around with quills stuck in them like regrettable life choices. Women's pain isn't taken seriously by doctors. Studies show that women are far more likely to have their pain dismissed by doctors, with many being told they're just stressed or emotional. Meanwhile, if a man stubs his toe, medical professionals practically roll out the red carpet for emergency treatment. In Japan, missing a phone bill can result in your number being recycled immediately. One day you're texting your friends, and the next, a total stranger is using your number to make business deals. Imagine explaining to your boss why you suddenly started selling used cars in Osaka overnight. Some places bill you for water based on an ancient system that assumes everyone uses the same amount. In some areas of the UK, water bills are calculated based on your home's 1970s property value, as if ghosts from the past determine your water usage. Hope they at least include spectral discounts. California was once an island on maps. For over 200 years, European maps showed California as a floating island. This wasn't just a small mistake, it was widely accepted. Even official Spanish maps treated it as fact, which probably made for some very confused explorers. Wait, why is the land still attached? The US once created a fake town for copyright reasons. In the 1930s, the General Drafting Company invented the town of Aglow, New York, to catch plagiarists. Years later, people saw it on maps and actually built a small settlement there. It started as a copyright trap and ended up in a real place. The first hands-free device was literally just a stick. In ancient times, people tied their primitive communication devices, like scrolls or slates, to their heads with string or wooden frames. Basically, the first hands-free experience looked less like modern Bluetooth and more like someone losing a battle with office supplies. The first Bluetooth headsets in the late 1990s were so large that users looked like they were wearing alien antennae. People thought they were talking to themselves in public, which wasn't considered normal yet. Early Bluetooth users had to choose between convenience and looking like they had an imaginary friend in their ear. China went from being an open marketplace to slamming the door on visitors. The Ming Dynasty decided that foreigners were more trouble than they were worth and cut off most outside contact. So, after centuries of trading ideas, China went full do not disturb mode while Europe scrambled to figure out how to get their luxury goods another way. Some people are so obsessed with eating glass that doctors had to name the condition hyalophagia. Yes, some humans willingly chomp on light bulbs like they are potato chips. The worst part? Some of them even insist it's crunchy and satisfying, as if dentists weren't already stressed enough. Some people are obsessed with turning themselves into real-life dolls. They undergo extreme surgeries, wear cartoonish outfits, and even practice doll-like movements. Imagine waking up one day and deciding, you know what? Being human is overrated. Time to live life as an anime character instead. There was a bizarre wave of creepy clown sightings in 2016, where people dressed as terrifying clowns popped up in random places just to freak others out. Some even chased pedestrians at night, proving once and for all that clowns belong in nightmares, not neighborhoods. Some amusement parks have had to remove clowns entirely their attractions because too many guests were freaking out. Imagine paying for a fun day out, only to find yourself sprinting in terror because a giant grinning nightmare on stilts walked by. And that's a wrap on some of the weirdest facts you'll ever hear. From the mysterious number 7 to sharks laying eggs that look like alien artifacts, the world is full of bizarre surprises. What fact blew your mind the most? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, because you never know what strange fact is coming next.